Hello and welcome. My name is Dave Min, and I am the state senator for District 37, which includes the cities of Irvine, my home city, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, Lake Forest, Costa Mesa, Tustin, Huntington Beach, Orange, Villa Park, and I'm probably missing some here. But I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to my inaugural appointments workshop in partnership with the Office of Governor Gavin Newsom, where we'll talk about the ins and outs of applying to California state boards and commissions. If you would like a version of this with live captioning, you can go to our website or to YouTube, and those will have live captioning. Given the unprecedented crisis posed by COVID-19, there's not really a better time to step up to serve than now. I appreciate everyone joining us today for taking that first important step towards serving our state, especially as we work to recover and build together. Civic engagement is crucial to the health of our democracy. By staying engaged and doing our part to get involved locally, we not only strengthen our institutions, but ensure that our community and its diversity has a voice in deliberating state policies and regulations. So I want to introduce my special guest today, Governor Newsom's appointments secretary, who will dig deeper into the application process. Secretary Catherine Rivera Hernandez is entrusted with overseeing the administration's 3,000 statewide appointments, including 300 boards. Secretary Rivera Hernandez has served as a member of the California Agricultural Labor Relations Board. She previously served as Chief Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Governor Gray Davis, and she's a product of the University of California system with a JD from University of California, Berkeley, where she was co-editor-in-chief of the La Raza Law Journal. Thank you so much for joining us, Secretary.
Thank you so much, Senator. I really appreciate it. This is just a great opportunity for all the reasons you mentioned. I think there is a belief that appointments is an insider's game, but with 300 appointments and, as you mentioned, 300 board and commission slots, we wouldn't get very far if that was the case. So I really appreciate the opportunity to remove the mystery around this process. One is, it is not as glamorous as it seems. We are an employment agency. So we have to start at the beginning, which is at our application, which is found at the gov.gov website under the appointments tab. The other information that you will find there is a list of vacancies on boards and commissions, which is very helpful, and also the types of slots that we are looking for. You will find a list of current opportunities for jobs with the administration. So those are paid jobs with the administration that we are trying to fill, as well as a list of my deputies, which I have several within the appointments unit, and their portfolios. So that will allow you to more directly contact the individual that is overseeing the appointment of the position that you might be interested in. Now, as to the application, for those that have not taken a look at it before, it is very detailed. It does ask some very sensitive questions, but the goal is to learn about you, your experiences, what has brought you to want to apply to serve in the administration. So there are not any wrong answers. We just tell people to simply be honest. The other part of that is that I've never worked for a governor who is more here for a comeback story than Governor Newsom. He knows, as a businessman himself, people try to do things. People try businesses that may not have been as successful as they had hoped for. People sometimes make mistakes that then they have to learn from. And it's about, what do you do after the fact? How did that frame, sort of your life and what your choices were going forward? So what I tell people is just don't take yourself out of the game. The appointments process is completely confidential. The only people who see those applications are my team. It's not even shared outside of the appointments unit. So we are always having those types of discussions with individuals to work through those details. So that's what we're here to do, and it all remains very confidential. Now, when we review applications, we don't usually go in and pull, let's say, every single person that might have applied for the California Horse Racing Board. We will definitely be looking at who has rolled off of that position and what is the composition of that board, because what we're trying to do is it's very often putting together a puzzle. We don't want people who all think alike, who all do the same thing, We're usually looking at, was it a lawyer that came off? Was it a marketing person, a communications person, somebody who manages, either nonprofits or certain businesses? So, and then also we have to, of course, take into account something you hear the governor talking about all of the time, which is diversity. And that's diversity of geography, diversity of ethnicity, diversity of gender. So we are very often putting in what we call our unicorn search. We put in the data and we pull those people out. So it is a subset of people. The other thing, though, is that the people that we pull may not actually have applied for a position on the horse racing board. So, that's the other sort of upside of how we do our searches is often we will pull that information out and we may cold call that individual and say, hey, are you interested in serving? Somebody said they didn't want to answer my phone the other day because they thought it was a telemarketer. And I said, well, you're not far from that. You're not far from wrong on that. I often am making cold calls to people and asking them to take on obligations that they didn't know we were going to be asking them to do. But that is sort of how we will usually operate. And of course, people will say no, and that's okay. If somebody says no, we don't, they're not blacklisted, they're not taken off of our radar. We want people who want to be in those positions, and we know that not everything is a fit for everybody. So that's okay. And then we will sort of narrow those people down who have agreed to engage in the process. And then we begin the interview process. And again, there are, a few usually start at a department level and then go to an agency level and then come to the governor's office. Or usually it is either somebody from my staff, possibly me, partnered with the policy person in cabinet or the legislative person or a comms person. It really depends on what the position is. And at that point, we will then narrow that group down. I do want to say that if there is a specific position that that you would like to do, or even if there's several, I would ask you to Google it. If you go to the website for that board or whatever that position might be, you will get a vast amount of information about what you might be getting into. It will tell you how often they meet. It'll tell you where they used to meet. I don't know what's going to happen, if I'm being honest, post-COVID. It'll tell you how long the meetings are, how complex the issues are. It's just, and you can also take a look at the other board members and people that might be serving on that. So it's just a great way to learn more about if that's something that you would really like to engage in. And it will also tell you how controversial. If you're a person who doesn't want your name in the paper, it'll definitely help you keep your name out of the paper by looking them up. Once we do, though, narrow down the individuals, we then I take them into the governor. I meet with him weekly. It's usually, if it's a single position for an appointment, it's one name. If it is a board, I'm often taking in a slate of names. He then makes his decisions. And any given week, we have anywhere from 30 to 50 people. So it just gives you kind of a sense of how many people we are moving through this process at a given time. And then, of course, if you are appointed, then a press release goes out, which if anybody has looked, we put them out today, we put them out throughout the week. And then, of course, the hard work begins. And I can talk more about kind of the support that comes, with that. But I think I'll stop there. And then we can just see what else I can sort of refine on or expand on.
Thank you so much, Secretary. I have a few questions in the queue, and I've got some of my own. The first question, how receptive are those that select the appointees to non-political retirees applying?
Non-political retirees.
People that are outside the system, as you said, not insiders, but also retired.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, there is a vast majority of people that we appoint in that group. It's often people who, most of the people we appoint are not political, just up front. Vast majority are not political people. And then on top of that, we do have a lot of retirees because they, are now retired and still want to give back in some way and still participate in whatever their interests might be. So we actually do appoint a lot of people in that group.
Fantastic. I got another question that came in from two different people, which is what's the length of the appointments?
So they vary depending on the board or commission. There are some that are called at pleasure, which means you serve until a governor takes you off. But most are usually a term of maybe 2 to, I would say, 4 years. The board I was on was a 5-year board, but that was a little different. Most of them are in between the 2 to 4 year term. And then usually if somebody is performing well, they are entitled to then a second term after going through the whole process over again. And then after that, they actually cannot be reappointed, which is why there is always a need, especially for the licensing boards, because they are terming out every month. People are terming off of those boards.
And I assume there's a place where you can find out which boards have which linked appointments?
Yes, yeah.
And we can probably post that in the comments at some point, but it's the governor's website, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. And here's another question. To what extent do these appointments allow you to work from your home or vis-a-vis in Sacramento?
I mean, I think all of them. I mean, and even now with, there used to be the mindset that with paid appointments, right, that you had to be in Sacramento. I think COVID has really changed that. We've appointed many people that do not live in the Sacramento area anymore, but it's definitely not at all a requirement or a consideration when it comes to the boards or commissions. We are purposefully looking for people who are throughout the state. Now, I don't know if the question is more about travel in the future, post-COVID. I wish I could tell you, I don't know if we will go back to how things were, which is, there would be meeting spots. And again, you can see that on their website. Some of them only meet in Sacramento, maybe quarterly or, every other month. Others would meet, in Sacramento, in LA, and, Oakland. So they all really vary. What I will say is if we ever do go back to the traveling days, the state does reimburse both for the travel expenses, and then we also pay per diem, which is essentially acknowledging that for most folks, they're taking time out of their lives, possibly their work or their families, and compensating for the work that they are, kind of taking on. And that can range anywhere from $50, I think the most I've seen is maybe $400 for those board days.
I can tell you're good at this, Secretary, because you answered the follow-up I was about to ask of is travel paid for? So fantastic. Okay. So next question, someone asked about retirees. I had a question about college students. Can college students apply, and what are the requirements, if any, for these positions? So
I'm going to be really upfront because this has been an issue that we've been talking about in the administration. And I think we're going to hear more about it, and that is the incorporation of youth into these appointments, and are there boards that are more suitable to sort of expand on and allow for youth. We do have some boards specifically like the Cal Volunteers Board that have youth slots. So we do have some boards that have that. There's also there are students that serve on the community college board, the CSU, the California State University Board, as well as the UC region. So there are those opportunities. But I will be very upfront, there are not that many opportunities for people who are in school to serve. We don't discourage it in any way. There just doesn't seem to be, there doesn't seem to be too many of them applying. Most of our applicants come in at the 30 plus, but there are definitely no limitations on that. And we do get a few people here and there who've done really extraordinary things. And so we are definitely, there's no limitation on it, but it's not where I would say there are lots of opportunities where you have a youth spot.
Got it. And then the follow-up is, are there requirements? Like, do you have to have certain degrees for certain types of boards or certain experiences for certain types of boards?
So one is there are certain statutory requirements for some boards, and you will see that in the on the list. So for example, you have to be a licensee. So if it's the podiatry board, you have to be a podiatrist for that slot. But there are also other slots which are public slots. And those are the ones we get excited about because those are the ones that don't have a vested interest those are the sort of the accountability for the people of California. They also often are our accountability partner as well with the board. And you don't have to have, in fact, you're not allowed to have any vested interest in that particular board. So that is a good place where I do encourage people who are interested in, board service to take a look at, because we are constantly struggling to fill those slots. As you can imagine, as I mentioned, if you're a public member, getting you to serve on the podiatry board or the structural pest board, or, it's not the most popular.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Secretary. And by the way, for those in the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to post that in the comments of how we're reviewing this, Facebook, YouTube, etc. We do have people monitoring. My next question relates to experience. So I think you mentioned that with some boards, there are specific requirements. For other boards that don't have those requirements, is it helpful to have government experience or a law degree or any particular career paths?
I don't know that that's the case, because there are just so many opportunities. And given even in the time that I've been here, the number of people we've appointed, the stories are so varied. We have people who have no college degree and have gained their experience in other ways. So I would hesitate to say that. There are some slots. For example, we have a slot where you have to be an accountant, right? Or a lawyer, and that is actually required as part of the position. But for the most of them, and especially for like the public slots, we don't try to put any limits, on those, because again, we're really trying to figure out the experiences of, of those individuals, and so far that's worked pretty well.
So my next question is, can someone keep their current job and be appointed? If so, what would be the time commitment typically towards their ongoing appointment?
The answer is yes, especially for boards and commissions. And the time commitment would vary depending on what you are looking to do. I hate to even say, I would say if it's an education board, which everybody wants to be on, so I'm not encouraging this, it's like, I've been told it's like another part-time job. But there are other, like the licensing boards, that I have been told by appointees is much more manageable. You do work at home when you can, you read the records, and then you have the meeting once a month. And and we have people who, we have many people who have full-time jobs, and some of them really busy full-time jobs or more than one job, who manage to serve. And again, we can always, if somebody's interested in a certain position, we always can talk through the particulars of that specific board.
Okay, so I've got a very specific question. Can you describe what boards there are that are related to healthcare, such as for nurse practitioners?
So there are a lot. We have like a medical board, we have a nursing board. We also have a lot of medical related, board of vocational psychiatrists, board of, behavior. It kind of goes on and on. Yeah. We also have varied ones, like, for example, the Health Professions Education Fund, which gives money to people who want to serve in underserved communities. So there are quite a few.
I think we just did a hearing on the orthopedics medical board. So
was it their sunset review? Yeah. Yes. It really. And the thing that's interesting about that, for example, is for somebody who has a nursing background, there really are a number of opportunities to find a medical related board that they might be interested in.
So I promise you that was not like a pop quiz trying to stump you. But the answer to Kristen, who asked that, is there are a lot of healthcare related boards, and so there are ample opportunities. Our next question, if someone's term is up in 2021, when will we know that their appointment is renewed or not?
Oh, boy, they're not letting me off easy. This is tough, because every person, every appointee, as well as every spot, is assessed in that time. So if somebody, we reappoint people, once they go through the interview process. We usually have some new people in there, but we also allow the person, if they want to seek reappointment. And then, we go through the kind of normal process and then make that decision. Because there are grace periods, people should not be surprised. For example, if you are up at, January, at the end of January, you have until the end of March. So it is not uncommon, especially with the number of appointments happening at one time, to go into what we call a grace period. I don't think I was ever appointed, before my grace period was coming up, and that was 5 times. So it's not uncommon to kind of go. But again, what I would encourage people to do, I think people think they can't, like I said, I have been on this other side 5 times. So when I came in, I brought a really different perspective, which is why I did make all of my deputies' emails public as well as mine. And I was also very clear with them that when appointees inquire whether they were appointees of the previous administration or ours, they need to respond. So I do encourage people, especially if it's their specific situation they want to know about, to call the deputy and ask them, or send them an email and ask them what they can expect. The one thing I've told my team is the news isn't always going to be great. I don't ever claim we are the best well-oiled machine. We just have too much moving through. So priorities get shifted. We lose quorums. Somebody, retires, all resignations, all of that happens. And I said, we can't go back and tell every single person who's moving through the process, because at any given time, we're looking at, 50 to 100 people that they're touching. But if you inquire, they need to respond back. With whatever it might be. We're going to put this off for 2 months. It might be, this is going to be the process. But I was very clear with my team on, sort of how we would approach that. So I would encourage that if it's a specific kind of situation.
Now, I have a question about the process. What happens after you get appointed? How soon do you get sworn in? When do you hear? And what are the steps involved?
Yeah, so if it's a board or commission, usually the appointee will be sworn in at the next meeting, whenever that might be. It's often done by the executive officer, where it is being done via Zoom even now. There are certain rules that we tell the person. It's like sometimes secretaries or department directors, somebody else could swear them, or members. I don't know if you ever get asked, but members are often asked to swear people in. But normally it's usually close to their first meeting, which is also when, these boards and commissions have staff. So you have usually an executive director and you have support staff. It is their job that we're not just going to throw you on a board and say, good luck, thanks for agreeing to serve. They are there to support you. They are there to answer your questions. They usually will walk you through if there are any rules about, ethics and, what you can or can't do as far as like a board member. But they are really there to support you. The other thing I will say that we do is that the way the boards term off, you don't have people all falling off at the same time. So we often will pair up a new person with one of the older appointees so that they can help that person out as well if they have questions or, need help with something. So I appreciate you asking that, because it's really important for people to know that even after the oath, that there is actually a system in place for various, wherever it is, wherever you end up, to bring you aboard and be helpful.
Thank you very much, Secretary. My next question, and I promise you these are not trying to stump you, but you're doing a great job, is what if someone wants to serve on 3 to 4 or more boards? Is that possible, and how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this 2 different ways. One is no. If you want to serve on multiple boards, we try to expand participation. So, we've had situations where somebody wants to serve on another board. We usually ask them to resign from whatever board they're currently on. But what I will say is if you have interest in multiple boards to apply to, you can do that on the application. We know, again, nobody is singular. You might like labor, but you also care about water, or you also care about, electricity, or whatever, whatever it might be. Or geology. You don't have to limit yourself. You can list multiple, as long as we can tell that you have an interest. If you put them all, we don't know what you're interested in, but as long as we can get a feel for the various areas that you're interested in, that's okay. We're not going to look at it and say, this person doesn't know what they like. People usually apply to more than one. So I would definitely encourage that. But for service, we do not usually allow people to serve on more than one.
I appreciate that. And I have a related question, which I think you kind of answered, but just I'll ask it so that you can clarify. Is it possible to submit an application and just submit no preference and allow you all to place that person if they're open to any board?
I mean, you can, because as I said, often when we do searches, we put in certain information, and often it may not actually, we might not even include what the board is. We'll just put in geography, whatever we're looking for. But I think you have a better opportunity if we have an idea of something that you are, that you are interested in. I love when people say, I just want to serve. It's like, if you just want to serve, we've got a public slot that you can come and serve on right now. So that means I think, it's like people hear this and then they call in, they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I was like, yeah, no, I know, but we have positions ready, empty, willing folks that would like to just get involved and, be the eyes and ears for the people of California.
Fantastic. And that's on the appointments under you?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
And it'll say public, so you will know that it's a public slot.
Fantastic. Thank you. Just a few more, and I know I want to be respectful of your time. What are some of the things that you and the governor consider when selecting an applicant? And maybe if you could share some recent examples of, tough decisions where you chose one person over another and some of the things that went into that decision, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So first, let me start generally. And I didn't know the governor before I took this job. I voted for, and I told him, I was like, I voted for you. And that's about all I knew about him. And so when I was approached by people who I had worked with and knew well for the last 20 years I've been in Sacramento, they were very encouraging. And when I met with the governor, I told him, I said, I did cabinet, so I see why you are talking to me, and I get that it's, it's like appointments is the intersection. It's like, policy, politics, and people, right? And I probably know more people that he knows than anybody else just because of the position of the appointments office. But I also said I've been doing this for 20 years. I have, a reputation. I have people I've worked with, and I don't have a great poker face. So if I'm going to do this, I have to be able to tell people kind of this is, how it is. And we have to be able, luckily he was on board for that. He was also on board for, making change and allowing for learning curves. So one example I will use, because honestly, it was kind of a test. I don't know if I should say that. He wouldn't like that. But he had said, we've got to start opening doors up, right? And we've got to, like, the representation among, Latinos was just not what it needed to be given the population. So, we got to start opening doors. And I said, that's fine. So I brought him the guy who had been, I'm not going to say the subject, but the guy who had been on the board for like 15 years, who was the premier expert in this. And then I have the young Latino who's been doing it for 5 years, but who was intelligent and smart and committed and, ready to jump on board. And I said, she's going to have a learning curve, but we can put her on. And he said, yep, that's what we're going to do. We have to open doors. So that was exciting for me because we have done that on several occasions where, it doesn't make everybody happy, but in his mind, serving on a board for, 7, 8 years or more, it's kind of it's time to kind of bring some new focus in. The other part of it is obviously this last year has taught us is, people will often ask me about, you have boards that deal with racial, injustice and racial issues. And what I tell them and what we've talked about internally is every board needs a racial lens. I mean, this is what we've been talking about. So, for us, it's like, I don't care if it's housing or health or, water. They all need that perspective. And so that's been another kind of focus for us. But it's hard. And it's hard because this is the governor that it's not and I know people are going to laugh, but it is not a political calculation for him. He tells me, is this person just good or is this person great? Or, are they all, you're just going to tell me they're all good? And I'm like, no, I will tell you if somebody is, going to have a learning curve. I will tell you all of that. But he allows for that. He is the type of person that put a woman who had served time in jail before there was a battered woman syndrome defense. And she was pregnant and killed her husband and went to prison. She was let out on a writ, and he put her on the Board of State and Community Corrections. And so that's why I talk about when I say like about experiences and, that kind of appointment would have been, unheard of. And we have it's not an anomaly. I mean, these are the stories. This is why I love this, my job. We have undocumented individuals serving throughout the administration and serving even on, education boards and where you have the population. So, as far as like his decision making, I mean, he's been bold, bolder than even I had expected. And he's really allowing for new opportunities in a way that at least 20 years ago was probably not the popular kind of way to go.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and the governor's emphasis on equity and representation, which I think, and I'm a former professor, so, I am, as I was saying earlier today to somebody, I'm greatly appreciative of the younger generation's real emphasis on speaking out on issues of equity and representation, but it's really refreshing to hear you speak about that directly. Just a couple more questions. I've got one here. What is the first step going forward after I've filled out the app?
I would, especially if you know what you're interested in, I would fill out the application and then I would contact the deputy and find out what, where it is right now. Like, where are you in a search? Is there an opening? The other thing I encourage people is, although we have a list of updated vacant positions, at some point, all of those will be vacant because, as I said, you have a constant churn of turnover. So if there's something that you really want to do and that's your thing, and especially if it's if you're a licensee in a specific position and that's what you wanted to do, if it says it's not vacant, check with the deputy because it will at some point, because there are limits on how long people can serve on a lot of these boards and commissions. So I just encourage people, like whatever it is, whatever the interest is, reach out to that deputy and have that conversation. And if it's not good news, if it's, no, we've got people lined up for months, if you want to be on the film commission, have at it, but it's going to be a tough slog, or UC Regent, right? But at least on most of our boards, there are going to be openings. So I'd have that discussion with the deputy.
And thank you so much, Secretary. So here's a question. A lot of the questions so far have been focused on the selection process. Here's a question that it focuses more on the perspective of the applicant, which is what are the factors they should consider before making the decision to apply?
My number one, and this is going to sound basic, but it is the one thing that comes up once people get over the excitement of being appointed, and that's time. The shine of being a governor's appointee and, that press release going out and great feeling and people calling and texting is fantastic. But then the work begins. So and then that is why I mentioned the Googling, sort of side of things. Because I also think that we have opportunities depending on what your ability and time commitment is. So it's really kind of getting that match. Because that is probably the one thing that has been kind of the most difficult is making sure people have the time to do those jobs. And then also just, what are you looking to kind of, to get out? It's like a contribution, like I said, for some people, it's the impact that certain entity might be having on racial inequality. For others, it might be, sort of environmental, or growing up, in an area that didn't have great drinking water, or, people have all of these different, so, I would really not only think about it, but you're going to get asked that as well, kind of like, why am I doing this? And it's okay, because some people have told us, especially on the public slots, I want to get this experience to see if this is something, that as I grow, I want to continue to do. People who are very successful in their board positions, we often will move them up to other boards, or boards that are more higher profile or more complex, especially if they're really good board members and thoughtful about their work. But yeah, I mean, those are probably the two things that, people just say I lost my fire for doing this type of work. So it's kind of like just considering that, up front.
Thank you so much, Secretary. So just for the purposes of time, I think this was supposed to end at 6. I will just note that if you have questions that were not answered, our staff will try to communicate those to the staff of Secretary Rivera Hernandez, and we'll get back to you with an answer. I did want to just leave you an opportunity, Secretary, if there was anything that wasn't addressed that you'd like to close with.
No, I just ask people to really think about it. I think for most people, and even for myself, when they called me about this job, you don't really think, you're kind of going along, especially during COVID, right? Change isn't feeling like what you need in your life right now. But I just ask people to really kind of consider it. They actually do need people, and I do have an opportunity. I think again, that's why this opportunity is so important. And what I try to get out is, I think people think, oh, they have this done. They don't need more people, and it's all the governor's friends, and and all of that. And it's just simply not true. And so I would just ask people to really think about if, hey, this is something I'm going to be able to try and do, and then to do it. Again, we go through the process sometimes with folks and they change their minds, and that's okay too. So I just really encourage people that if it's something you have an interest in, to give it a shot, because there really are a lot of opportunities. And this is a big state with many Californias, as I call them. And so I just really encourage you to think about actually sort of taking that next step.
Well, I want to just thank you, Secretary, for joining us today and for sharing your insights on the appointments process. It is super complex and opaque for those of us who are outside the system. And it is a real opportunity, as you described, to serve this state, to serve our communities. And I hope everyone tuning in will use this opportunity to apply to vacancies available at www.ca.gov/appointments. So I'm just going to leave this up here for now. There are so many opportunities to get involved, hundreds of possible appointments as we described, many with key roles in shaping our communities in Orange County. And this is about having a seat at the table. Your willingness to serve helps us ensure that Orange County and our diverse communities are able to weigh in on different decisions, whether you're an expert in your field or just trying to make a positive difference in our state. Your appointment can expand our governing board's knowledge base, improve decision makings, provide a new perspective, and generally help manage our statewide resources. I'm particularly grateful to you, Secretary, as well as what you described as Governor Newsom's commitment to representation and equity. And I really do hope that today's workshop will convince people of all different ages, genders, racial dynamics to apply for this, because we do need representation that reflects the diversity of California and of Orange County. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Secretary, for joining us and sharing your wisdom. I hope we get a lot of applications out of today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for having me. Have a great evening.
You too. Happy Hump Day, everybody.